Hello YouTube, how's everybody doing today? I got another video tutorial for y'all. Today we're going to be going over creating a guitar processing chain in Ableton or any other digital audio workstation. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, what I'll say when you are creating any sort of processing chain for electric or acoustic or whatever it may be, well, actually in this particular situation, I would say more so for electric, is you should be considering the way that you are placing your plugins within the chain. So think about how a guitar player would have their pedals set up in real life and try to replicate these sorts of things within your plugin chain to get a sound that's a little bit more realistic towards the way an actual electric guitar might sound after it's run through pedals into an amp out of a cabinet into a room. So I'll show you this clip that I got here. I just recorded some really simple electric guitar. Right, so, and take everything that I'm about to show you guys with a grain of salt as well. I'm not a professional sound designer. I'm not an engineer by any means. I'm just a hobbyist, and I'm looking to show you guys the processes that are involved within making music, basically. So here's the sound that I came out with this pedal, or here's how it sounds now, I guess I should say. Right, so it's kind of got that classic like mid-range muff tone that you might hear in like a lot of indie records or things of that nature. There's not that much definition. It's really kind of washed out almost. And one thing I will say is, before I even started building this chain, this is the sound that I had in mind. Something when you're starting to design a chain like this, you want to kind of have an outcome in mind before you start building, so that you can build towards that overall vision and get towards a particular sound. Otherwise, you're just going to be throwing things in and hoping for the best, right? That's how I work. But anyways, so what did I do? What did I put in here? So I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to open up this chain here. So the first thing I've got in here is just a gain. That's because I've saved this preset for later use. So if for some reason I record some guitar into my interface and I don't have the gain at a level that I like, once I actually send it through this chain, I think, oh, maybe the gain could be increased right from the get-go, then I can do that right here. Then what I did was I put in a channel EQ and I carved out some of the low end and some of the high end as well, because I wanted this sound to be much more mid-rangey. So right from the get-go, I've kind of centered in on an area that I want to focus on in terms of like the sonic spectrum. So then after this, I put in a compressor on, I think peak mode here. Where is it? Peak. Yeah, so this basically means anytime a peak occurs in your audio, the compressor will act very quickly. If you have it set to RMS, it's more of a leveled average and it reacts more slowly. I wanted a little bit more of an aggressive compression because strumming patterns down the road with this particular patch, I might be a bit aggressive to try to get some of the character and tonality out of it. So I set that up there. I got a little bit of gain reduction, nothing too crazy going on, I don't think. Let's see. So there are a couple points where, it's getting compressed fairly heavily down to -6 at a ratio of 4. You might even want to consider either re-recording, because this was just a sloppy recording, or putting another compressor afterwards and using the same kind of settings, but halving the gain reduction on both of them so that they're not working quite as hard, and that the overall compression won't be as noticeable in your recording. Just a suggestion, but anyways, after that, I put in a pedal and I've increased the gain and I pulled a lot of the treble out, because again, I found with this particular insert and the pedal insert that Ableton has, even now, there's there's kind of some harshness when you push the gain, and I didn't really like that sound, so I just kind of pulled some of that treble out. Then again, I boosted the mid-range, which I've also mapped a whole bunch of these different parameters over here, so that instead of having to go through the entire chain and fine-tune certain adjustments, the most important effects in the chain are accessible right here. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Then after that, I have an effect rack, and this is just putting a little bit of chorus and some delay on the overall signal, and I can adjust that using the chorus and delay macro here. And you know, you guys might be going, well, I don't have the effect rack, I don't have those plugins, I'll never be able to make anything that sounds like this. A lot of the plugins in your DAW are more than capable of creating really, really good sounds. You just have to take the time to tweak them properly. And you know, the VST wars that are out there and the amount of selection is just a bit ridiculous sometimes. So what I've started doing lately is I've stuck to a couple plugins and just gone with those and learned them really well. And I've tried to figure out how to get the best sounds out of those before jumping into 1,000 others. It's ridiculous how many there are out there. I know you guys all know this, but anyway, so just if you don't have some of the plugins in here, no big deal. There's a ton of other alternatives within your DAW that will do just the same job. Then after that, I have this notch cleanup here because my guitar has some pretty bad resonances in it, and this isn't really a great practice, because when you start notching out sounds like this or portions in the frequency spectrum, then you kind of affect the overall tonality of like the natural timbre of the sound. So I'll show you what it sounds like with and without. Right, so some of those higher end frequencies, I found that they were like a little bit piercing to the ear. But again, once you start notching out all of this, it doesn't sound quite as natural. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I don't have top end equipment and I'm not an engineer, so I'm sure I've made a couple mistakes along the way here, but the principles I believe are helpful. Then after that, I thought about putting some sort of a reverb plugin in to kind of wash the sound out. So I'm thinking again about how a guitar player would have their rig set up, right? Up to this point, they've got a pedal after some compression and a little bit of EQ, and then they have a chorus and delay. And at basically right near the end of the chain, I put in this Valhalla shimmer in order to kind of wash the sound out further. And then what have I done here? This is a tremolator, I believe. So a little bit of tremolo, and I put it afterwards because I wanted to affect the reverb as well, right? I wanted the whole signal to be phasing in and out, whereas if I had put this before the Valhalla shimmer, then the signal going into the reverb would be phasing in and out, or the amplitude would be increasing and decreasing, but the reverb itself wouldn't be affected by that. So again, order is important when you're building these chains. And then afterwards, I put in like an amp and a cabinet here. So I pulled the presence down because I thought that the high end was really piercing. I put the gain up to kind of get the most out of this particular preset in Ableton. And again, I pulled some of the bass out because I wanted to focus more so on the mid-range. And then you always want to put a cabinet after your amp, which is something I didn't do for a while. And without it, it just sounds awful. It sounds really quite harsh and digital. So just like in the real world, you need a cabinet with your mic. You can't just have a cabinet with your amp. You can't just have an amp. It doesn't make sense. So, and yeah, I've got a 1x2 speaker set up here, Neuron Access condenser microphone, dual output so that there's stereo image. And then after this, Got another EQ to clean up some of the low end, pulled out a little bit of the low mids here because I thought it was getting kind of muddy. And this is kind of simulating the room that you would be in, right? So I put in I think it's, what's it called? The guitar room preset. So it's acting as, even though this is a delay unit, it's acting as a reverb, and it's kind of simulating the amp being, and all the pedals and all the effects being run through a room, which is pretty cool. So without it, it sounds like this. Right, so it's just a little touch. It adds a little bit of realism to the overall sound. It kind of glues things together. And then at the very end, I cut some more lows out, and there were some harsh frequencies I found around here that I pulled down. So yeah, that's the basics of creating a guitar processing chain in Ableton or any digital audio workstation. Things to keep in mind, once again, the order of your plugins or pedals, if you want to consider them that. How hard you're driving things. The harder you drive, the more saturation you're going to get out of things. The less you drive, the more clean of a tone you're going to get. Where is it within the frequency spectrum that you want your sound to be sitting, and what type of effects do you want? Stereo image is important, aggressive compression or subtle compression. All these things you need to take into account while you're building your chain. And if you do that, you'll be good. So I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And yeah, take it easy.